why did you decide to work in India, in Punjab, instead of staying abroad? Both of you have studied at universities in America. Both of you have gone back, right? When we think of Punjab brain drain and we think of people, baar jana, right? I am here because of that, right? That's why I was born in Australia. So what made you want to stay, and what gave you the faith in your abilities to enact the change that you want to change? I'll start with Amitos, maybe.
So I was working in San Francisco. I was working for a tech company there. But my work, I mean, it was good. I felt good there, but I somehow felt that, I'm not making any change. I'm not making any difference. There are certain things that drive a person. Sometimes it's money, sometimes it's impact, or, it's whatever. For me, it was some sort of impact. That's what I value the most, and I still value that a lot. And I was like, I think I can make more. I can make some social impact in my home city, where my talent is actually required. And that was the thing that made me come back, started this, and I'm really happy I can have some impact here. There are people who've actually stayed back in Chandigarh too because of this ecosystem. I know 10 people for sure that have stayed back because of this ecosystem. Else they would be either in Gurgaon, Bangalore, or Australia, US. So I'm glad I can prevent brain drain, and I have some impact in my own little ecosystem. So yeah, it was impact, social impact, that really motivated me.
Amazing. And Daman, for you, why did you come back? Why did you stay there and persevere?
All right, I'll just forget to do that. So I have a background in research in Indian foreign policy. I was in fact in Washington, D.C. And the reason I initially came back was because I wanted to have on-ground field work and learn from the region and talk about foreign policy from Delhi itself. But somewhere along the line, I decided that and changed paths and wanted to get involved in the impact sector instead. And this is when I transitioned towards working in the social sector. And then that idealism, I think Shweta talked about initially, where you feel like as a young person that you're going to have more impact being in India is what has kind of stuck on. So staying with that spirit of idealism, what keeps me back here is my family, friends, and just, this initiative to kind of make a little bit of a difference by being here. So that's my story.
All right. Amazing. I might just jump to a couple of audience questions. I wonder if, I'm just trying to think if our audience wants to, we've got a question from Harmeet. It would be nice if I could get Harmeet to ask it, but let me just quickly see if I can, or I will ask it for her. All right, Harmeet, I sent you a message. I responded to you via the Q&A, but I don't know if you saw, so I'm just going to promote you to a panelist to see if you can ask the question. So right now you should be able to, there we go. We've got you on the screen. All right, I'm going to unmute you. Actually unmute yourself. I'm just putting you on the spot here. You've got a great question. Do you want to ask that question? You'll have to unmute yourself. All right, let's see. Okay, so I think Harmeet is probably, this panelist thing can be a bit confusing. So I guess I'll ask for you for now. All right, Harmeet is the Chief Operating Officer of Girls X Tech, which is also an organization Daman has worked with, and Daman has worked with Harmeet, which is really cool. So she said, how do you envision the role of Punjabi migrants in supporting the solutions, ventures, working effectively for a progressive Punjab, especially the women-centric solutions? How effective collaborations can benefit and support women? Maybe Simranpreet, do you want to start? And then we'll go to Daman.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, like I was sharing about, the time being most valuable. So in terms of how can people really engage, I would say the good news is that at this point of time, there are many initiatives going on, right, across Punjab, and we have, also tried to map out some of them across sectors. People working on agriculture, people working on women issues, people working in education, and each one of these organizations can do very well with some support from people who are outside the country but really love Punjab and want to support initiatives. So my recommendation would be, like identifying these organizations, finding a way to reach out to them, just asking what the needs are, and where is it that these individual organizations would need support in, and then curating your own role accordingly. So I think that initiative probably would to come from all of you, and even in terms of if you need help in understanding who are the people in specific sector or even in specific districts in Punjab, if you are from a particular place, say Hoshiarpur, Amritsar, or anywhere else, right? And if you are saying I want to support someone there, so yeah, I think there are people across the region who are making efforts in their own ways, and we can play our own bit in making sure they're able to do that better. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think, Amitos, do you have something to add here? Oh, sorry, I said Daman earlier. Sorry, Daman, I'll go to you. Is there anything you have to add here about how diaspora kids, as well, how can we get involved in making a difference? Because, and the reason I asked this, and I think so our audience are asking this as well, is we feel so disconnected, like I think every time I go to Punjab, I go for a vyah, I go to do what? To buy some suits, and then I come back and pretend that's my role. And so this year when I went there with a different lens, I was shocked at what I realized when I looked at the deeper truths. Obviously there's a lot of potential, and I agree there's very clever people, but I think as the diaspora, us born here, us migrated here, Punjabis have done very well for themselves across the world, as well as Indians, right? But we don't have this exact relationship back to India in a meaningful way. Other than like we go to the Pind. I know the Pind we're from. I know, I've gone there, I've, done all that. But, and part of it, I think, I don't know, the reasons I'm guessing can be we just don't know where to start. Like, what do I do? So if you have any other tips or ideas of things, I'd love you to share them with us.
I personally think, related to my industry, I personally feel, if somehow Australians, people who've made it big, or people who, experienced people who know how, they built up companies and reached a particular place, now they want to give it back to the society. I feel they should, make some bodies that, some organizations that vet Indian startups and contribute there. This will create value both sides.
Do you know much about the international investment at all, in terms of because I've tried to be an angel investor within Australia, and I can't unless I have a high net worth, $2 million of assets. So do you know anything about the vehicles, or no, not at the moment?
No, nothing. And in fact, over here too, our startups in Chandigarh too, they don't want to raise money from local people, because the mindset of local investors is a typical businessman. They would want, okay, I've invested X amount of money. I want interest. The amount of money that my bank is going to give me, I want a little more than that within 1 year. That's not how investments work in the startup world. So people in Australia who've made it big, if they want to connect back to their, Punjab, Chandigarh, or in India, I think they should form some bodies that vets Indian startups and, get in touch with the Indian government and provide funds. This could create value both sides.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no, thanks.
Okay, fine. Mentorship is good. Mentorship is fine, but real help, trust me, would be pure funds. If they can give funds to, and I'm not talking about, Series A or Series B that we want millions of dollars. It's just very small. When a startup is, at its incubation stage, all they need is a couple of lakhs, that's it. And they're ready to shed their equity for that. And all it takes is a couple of $1,000. That's what they need. And I don't think so that's a big amount for a foreign investor who's big and they want to connect back to their
That's
roots.
the opportunity that I think Indians living abroad should think about is angel investment back into Punjab. And like you said,
Yeah.
for me to even start an angel investment in Australia, I need to have $2 million of assets. I think from memory, I was looking this up recently because I want to diversify my investments. In Australia, everyone's a property investor, everyone. And the banks and the system encourage this. But from an economic value standpoint, we are better off for our countries to invest in businesses and startups. And part of that begins with obviously our own education as understanding. If you don't have money, fair enough. At the moment, there are other ways to help. But if you have money in Australia, maybe it's that you put $10,000 or $5,000 or a few $1,000s a year back to invest into people building interesting businesses. And I'm someone who would like to be an active investor where I can invest cash, but I also want to work with the founders with their marketing, with growth, with client acquisition, because I think it's a journey. You don't just invest, like you say, with a traditional mindset to get more money than a bank. Yes, you will make money if the founders grow, but your mindset as an investor should be, I'm here to invest cash, but also I'm a smart investor. I'm going to give you my access to my networks, access to help you grow your business. And, these are really, I think, important things. So thanks for sharing. I think it's a very tangible way to attendees. Bauman, did you have anything you wanted to add?
There you go. Firstly, thank you for that question, Hermeet. So good to hear from you. Like Daisy mentioned, I was in the founding team of Girls X Tech, and it's great to have that question, very relevant. And I think, Daisy, this is the question you should be answering, in fact. This is where, you understand the diaspora, you understand the inclination for people wanting to give back, and then there being this disconnect. As Amito said, I think the first and foremost what people on ground here really require is funding. And a buck travels a lot more in India than it does abroad. So the same, even a small amount can go a long way here. So setting up institutions, funds, and even mentorship programs which work with social change makers and startups in the country, I think that's the best way the diaspora can get involved personally. But again, I would love to hear from you because you're someone who's made that transition, who's been able to give back, where most people flounder and don't know how to do it. So why don't you tell us also your opinion on this one? Turning it back to you.
I think part of it is, for me, it was one is interest in knowing our history, the knowledge. So the more I learned about Punjab, the more I learned about colonization, the more I learned about the British Raj and the impacts of that to this day, the more I researched about the drug problem in Punjab, the highest consumers of drugs right now, the more I learned about the lyrics of songs that I love to dance to, but are about drugs and violence and guns. And I thought, hang on, something's wrong. Something's really wrong. And then I became very aware and quite depressed. I was like, what am I doing? Like I lived in Tanzania. I volunteered in Africa for 2 months. I've lived in Spain for 5 months. I learned Spanish. I lived in Thailand. I volunteered 3 months with refugees and asylum seekers in Thailand, mainly Pakistanis, Ahmadis. And I used to speak Punjabi with them. Some were from Lahore as well. And so I've done a lot of social justice work across the world. And, when the opportunity in Tanzania, I worked with an Indian woman in Tanzania who was from Wales, the UK. She was inspiring. At the age of 24, she had like 40 staff, 20 volunteers, 20 paid staff. She'd never been to university. She was dyslexic and she was running East Africa's largest social impact hub. And I was 21 when I went there. And I thought, wow. And an opportunity came there to stay in Tanzania. And then I thought, if I'm going to stay anywhere to do this work, it's India, and it's probably around Punjab or somewhere in India, because I resonate strongly. So I think how we get involved from my end, I think it's, one is get to know the current state of affairs. What is happening in Punjab? What is the history and what is the impact? And then rather than feeling like I'm hopeless about it, I guess 2 is this step. I want to create a space for you guys because you guys are working on solutions. So I think this gives us hope. It excites us. It shows us that things are possible. There are people doing things because too often the media and the music, munda baar gaya, munda sari firda, munda this, that, munda kitte, where's the munda or the kudi that stayed and did really cool stuff? Those stories are missing. And if we cannot think of inspiring people in Punjab who are doing great things like you guys, then we cannot imagine it's possible. So I think it starts with that. And then the third tangible way later is relationships. I was part of Australia-India Youth Dialogue, which is like a bilateral relationship thing. And, they keep stressing the biggest thing that's going to move Australia and India forward is real relationships between locals. And how do we develop those relationships? So obviously now I will say to Amitos, yeah, I have a spare $5,000 to invest. Let me know of startups and maybe we can start something there, So things like this. So I think it's real relationships. Or I might say, hey, I want to donate $1,000 a year because I have some charity money. Do you know any meaningful charities I can give to? Often the charities we give to are big multinational Australian companies with huge millions of dollars of budgets. What about the grassroots stuff in Punjab? So I think there's that. And it comes through building trust with you guys and young people who are doing things. So like I said, each of you, I met you before. I kind of vetted you before I saw your work. And I thought you had integrity, trust, ambition, and our future really lies in your hands for the state. So I think those are the three areas: knowledge, read about the history, read about how the effects of partition affect us to this day. Riz Ahmed is and this is very timely right now. Riz Ahmed is doing a lot of rap music about this. He's Pakistani, about what happened and with British. And his rap lyrics hit me in the heart. Like I was like, whoa, that was a lesson in history nobody told me. I was raised in Australia. Nobody told me about partition. Like I know little bits here and there, but nobody told me the very detailed things of how it affects today, So I think there's musicians and cultural people who are coming out with that. So that's knowledge is one. Two is this stuff, events like this, ask questions, engage in, like Simranpreet's got a Punjab Youth Leaders Program, WhatsApp. So I've given charity money to initiatives on that WhatsApp. I get involved. So I think those are some other things. So I hope those are useful to start with and to look for opportunities.